Hello and welcome to the channel. On today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you how to draft a monostrap gown with an underbust corset. So if it's your first time viewing my channel, please hit on the subscribe button. Let's dive right into today's video. So the first thing I've gone ahead to do is mark out my basic measurements. So my basic measurement is my shoulder to bust, shoulder to underbust, and shoulder to waistline. For the neckline, I'm using a basic neckline of 3 by 3 inches, and I'll go ahead to mark my shoulder divided by 2, and I'll add half inch because one side has sleeve. That's a total of 7.5, and I'll go ahead to come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope or shoulder slant. Then get my chest line, which is my bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. So whatever I have there, I'm going to go ahead and mark, creating a straight line. So on the shoulder, I have 7.5. I'll mark it at this point, and I'm going to go ahead to connect it. Now I'm going to go ahead to mark my bust circumference divided by 4 to serve as a guide for my armhole. Divide what you have into 2, and from that half, go in by half again. Connect your armhole down to your underbust circumference and connect upwards. So after connecting, this is what I have. The next step is I'm just going to go ahead and outline my shoulder and mark out all my measurements so that you won't get confused. So now I'm going to be marking my nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5. I'm going to mark at the bust, underbust, and waistline. So now at this point, I divided at my armhole. I'm going to connect it down to my bust line. So after connecting that, this is what I have, and the next step is to mark your dart intake. So I'm going to mark half inch at one side and 1.5 inch at the other side, and I'll go ahead to place my ruler and connect. For a plus size, you're going to use 1 inch and 2 inches. So after that, I'm going to place my French curve, and I'm going to go ahead to connect at both sides. So I don't want it to be too curvy, and I'll go ahead to blend in. So the next step right now is I'll just go ahead to outline what I have marked out already. So after outlining that, now we're going to mark half inch on top of the line and below it. So we are going to connect that line back to the bust line this way, and on the other side also you're going to go ahead to blend it in. Go ahead to outline it with your marker so that it will be visible. So that 1 inch we took out, I'm going to extend it at my armhole area so that my pattern will be meeting at both sides. So now the next step is to insert your measurement. I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4, measure this 1 inch, replace it, and I'm going to mark my sewing allowance. Next, I'm going to mark my underbust circumference. Whatever you have at the bust, take it to the chest line before doing that, and go ahead to connect your armhole. And this is my armhole right now. So as you can see, we adjusted the armhole. Mark your underbust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, and mark the sewing allowance. Also repeat the same process for your waistline. So now I'm going to go ahead to connect it down, and I'm going to use my marker to outline it to make it more visible, and also on the shoulder do the same. So I'm going to go ahead to cut out my pattern. So if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please hit on the subscribe button. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. So after cutting out my pattern, this is what I have right now. I'm going to open it up to show you. So the next step you're going to take right now is to go ahead to alter the neckline of your dress into a monostrap. So as you can see, what we have here is a bit high. So I'm going to place my tape, and I'm going to come down by 4.5 inches at this point. So you can go ahead and use 5 inches. So watch where I'm placing my tape. So after I'm done doing that, I notice that the neckline is a bit lower, and I'm going to go ahead to add another pattern paper underneath it. So now I'm going to go ahead to alter my neckline. So I marked out that point so that it will be visible. So if you notice the neckline we have at this point, it's a little curvy. It didn't just go straight. So I'm just going to connect from that initial point that I marked, and I'll go up a little and then blend it down into the neckline. So after I'm done achieving what I want, the next step I'm going to take is I'm going to go ahead to use my marker and I'm going to outline it. I don't know if mine is perfect, but I tried getting the neckline, so you can go ahead and try yours. So now this is what I have, and I'm going to go ahead to cut it out. So next, we are going to be creating a collar for this dress. So I'm going to go ahead to place this pattern underneath it, and I'm going to pin it down. So if you notice, the dress has a collar, so this is what we are trying to create. So I'll go ahead and I will pin down my pattern on it, and I'm going to measure about 2.2 inches. You can use 2 inches, 2.5 inches. So going over to this side, I'm going to take like ½ inch, and but I'm going to make it meet at that end, and I'm going to go ahead to connect till I get to this part. So as I'm going up, I'm going to go ahead to make it a lot bigger than the other side. So this is what I have. Now I'll be tracing out this pattern. So I'm just going to mark out the neckline I have on top, and I will stop at the shoulder, take out my pattern, and I'm going to go ahead to place it back to make sure that my line is in order, and I'm going to take my tracing wheel and I'm going to go ahead to trace it out. So this is if you're cutting out the pattern, but if you're going to sew directly, you're just going to, after you're done joining your neckline, you're going to cut out your collar. So this is what I have, and I'm going to go ahead to cut this out. So if you have any question concerning this tutorial, please leave your question at the comment section. So after cutting out, this is what I have, and now we'll be moving over to the back pattern. So I've marked all my basic measurement. The only difference is my zipper, and I used the basic neckline of 3x3. So I went ahead to mark my shoulder to bust line plus 1 inch, and I marked my nipple to nipple divided by 2. So all my measurement is starting after the zipper line. So I'll take ½ inch dart at both sides, connect it upwards, and on the other part I'll mark so. So after I'm done marking, I'm just going to go ahead to outline it to make it more visible. Now I'll be inserting my body circumference, mark my bust circumference divided by 4, mark the sewing allowance, mark my waist circumference, mark the dart intake and add my sewing allowance, go over to the waistline, mark my waistline, measure the dart intake, replace it, and mark my sewing allowance. So I'll just go ahead and I will connect back my pattern. So I'm going to go ahead also to make it more visible by marking it out with my marker. So next, we're going to get rid of bulginess at the back of the dress. Mark ½ inch, and you're going to go ahead to extend it upwards. So after now, we're done with the back pattern. So I'm just going to cut out the back pattern, and after I'm done cutting out the back pattern, you can go ahead and convert your back to a princess dart. All you have to do is divide your armhole into 2, and you're just going to connect it from the bust point down to that point that you have at the armhole, and you can just go ahead to cut it out. But for my back, I just want it to be a basic back. All you have to do, cut it out and join it with ½ inch. So after I'm done doing this, I'm going to separate my pattern. It's actually unfold because this is a mono strap and you're going to be cutting it together. So now I'm just going to go ahead to pin my zipper allowance out. So when you're sewing your dress, after you're done sewing, you're going to pin out your zipper allowance, and you're going to be cutting the neckline. So why you're doing this is so that the neckline at the zipper part is going to meet, because most times on a mono strap, what you have in front is what you have at the back of your pattern. But for this particular pattern, the neckline in front is curvy. So now go ahead and make sure that your shoulder meets. So I'm going to mark the point it meets at this part at the back, and I'm going to trace out my back neckline. So for my back mono strap, I'm just making a basic back, but I'm going to make sure the part at the armhole and the shoulder line meets, because it's very important when you're drafting a mono strap that the back and the front is almost the same, to make it align or make it easier for you. So I'm just going to cut out this pattern for my back. So after cutting it out, I'm going to go ahead to unpin the back. So you want to go ahead and unpin the back so that you're going to cut out the excess that you have at the zipper part this way. So I'm just going to cut it out, and if you notice, my zipper part at the back part is meeting. So if you used a princess dart, you will still be achieving the same thing for the back. So this is what I have, and next we'll be drafting the underbust corset. So this is similar to what I posted on my last video. So I'm going to make sure my underbust starts at the my underbust corset starts at the underbust, and I'll mark my waist, then go down to my full length. I'll be using 22 inches, so you can use 22 to 24 inches, and I'll go ahead to repeat this. And after marking it out, I'm going to place my ruler and I'm going to draw a straight line at that point. So after drawing my straight line, I'm going to go ahead to label my pattern as underbust waist and underbust waist and hip. So the last measurement will be your hip. So at this point, I'm going to mark my hip circumference divided by 4. My waist circumference divided by 4. Mark my half-inch joining allowance. Mark my waist circumference divided by 4. Mark my waist allowance. So if you want to snatch your waist, you can actually take out 1 or 2 inches from your hip. So I'll go ahead to mark the hip circumference at that point and add half-inch for joining. So after that, I'm going to go ahead to connect. From this point, I'll be going down by 2 inches. You can go ahead to go down by 3 inches. So from the underbust line, I'm going to go ahead and I will connect it down to my to that 2 inches that I marked. So from my hip point, I'm going to go ahead to go up by 3 inches, and I'm going to draw like a little curvy shape at that point, because what I have is a bit curvy, and I'm going to connect it down to my hip point. So you can as well go up a bit by the hip point if you don't want it to be too pointy actually. So after this, I'm just going to go ahead to outline my pattern, and after I'm done outlining my pattern, I'm going to go ahead to cut this out. So this is what I have after I'm done cutting out. So this is a pattern paper which I have marked also my basic measurements. So what I'm going to do right now is to go ahead to mark it out. So I'm just going to make sure I have a straight line at that point, and I'm going to go ahead to cut out and trace out the rest of my body shape. And on this point, I'll go in by 2 inches and come in by half, just like I did in my previous pattern. Go ahead to outline this, and I'm going to cut out. So this is going to be the back pattern, and I'm going to be having 2 of this and 1 piece for the front. So for the back neckline, I'm going to go ahead to cut out a collar for it. So I'm just going to pin it down just like the same way we did for the front pattern. So I was actually supposed to cut it out first and I forgot. So at this shoulder part, I'm just going to trace out what I have, and while I was cutting it out, my camera stopped videoing. So all I did was, after taking out the shape, I went ahead to trace it out just like we did in the front. So while joining your pattern at the shoulder, please take in 1/2 inch dart so that it's going to relax very well. That is when you're joining your dress. After joining it, you can just create like a little dart at the shoulder so that it will lap very well. So for the total length of the dress, remember that the top part ended at 17 inches, that's shoulder to waistline. So the full length of the gown, that for me, if I'm making it, I'm going to be using 40 inches. So I'm going to be minusing 17 inches from it. After minusing the 17 inches, what I'm going to have, that's my shoulder to waist, is 23 inches. So for the down part, you're going to cut a fabric. You can use 2.5, 3 inches or 2 inches, and you're going to create like a gathers on the waistline, just like when you're sewing a gathers dress. So with that, I'm done with today's tutorial. If you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please hit on the subscribe button and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Thanks.